Let's start off with the New Orleans Saints, who I think their playoffs are bust. Even though they probably won't make the playoffs, in my opinion, they're going to be like an 8-9, 9-8 team at best. You want to make the playoffs, or else you're not going to think it's a successful season. The Miami Dolphins, you got to be in the Final Four in order for it to be a successful season. They have to win at least a couple playoff games. They haven't won in 24 years. Tua signed his new contract, so you at least have to be making the Final Four for it to be considered a successful season. Hopefully they don't have to play in temperatures below 45 degrees. The Ravens, I think they're in Super Bowl or bust category because the expectations last year, they already got to the Final Four. They've had playoff success. You have to win the Super Bowl this year or it's not a successful season. But they haven't really gotten there at all. So I'll put them in Super Bowl would be cool for them. If they make it to the Super Bowl, I think they're going to be happy because they haven't gotten there in 12 years or so. So, yeah, that would be good. The Bengals are Super Bowl or bust. They've been there. It's like, okay, we don't want to just go to the Final Four and just say we were there. They didn't win the Super Bowl, so I don't think they're going to win the Super Bowl, but the vibes there are Super Bowl or bust. Joe Burrow, contract, wide receivers, that whole issue. So the Bengals are, I think, Super Bowl or bust. The Broncos, they have a rookie quarterback. I think their playoffs are bust. They're in a tough division, so you'll be happy if they make the playoffs. Sean Payton, they're going to re-sign Justin Simmons? Probably not. The offensive line's not getting really any better. But yeah, I think overall you're kind of playoffs or bust. The Giants playoffs would be cool. I know, even though the timing of the organization, I don't know why I said organization, not organization, but that remains to be seen. But I think the playoffs would be cool for the Giants. Joe Shane in his third year, but at this point, I mean, Daniel Jones, yeah. The Vikings, similar, rookie quarterback Sam Darnold, not too much expectations. I think you're more playing for next year. You hit some players in the draft. I think next year is more going to be like your playoffs or bust season. So yeah, the Vikings are in that category. The Rams are, Matt Stafford. They already got a Super Bowl, honestly. So, and you got rid of Aaron Donald. Well, Donald retired. So, I think if they get to the Final Four, that's a good season. You made it to the playoffs last year. Another step up would be good. You won a Super Bowl recently, so it's not too much pressure. So, I think they're in that category. The Buccaneers, they made the playoffs last year, so I think they're more in playoffs or bust, and playoffs would be cool because they're in a weak division. So, if you make the playoffs, you're happy as a team. I think, again, you won the Super Bowl a couple years ago, so if you make it to the playoffs this year, you're like, yeah, that was a pretty successful season. Next, you have the Lions. They're a Super Bowl or bust at this point. It's weird to say. I mean, we're at this point where the Lions are Super Bowl or bust, which is kind of fun. Two cats in the number one category with Jared Goff. I mean, they should have been in the Super Bowl last year. So, and Dan Campbell has these guys fighting. You didn't lose too much. In fact, you probably gained more than you lost in the offseason, even though you lost some pieces. So, the Lions are Super Bowl or bust. Crazy to think. The Bears are in one of these two. It's hard to tell. I would put them in playoffs or bust because you have Caleb Williams, even though he's a rookie. There's a lot of expectations, especially with the coach. If he doesn't make the playoffs, I do think he gets fired. Or if he barely misses, I think he could keep his job.
This guy was driving way over the speed limit.
All right, the 49ers, they're Super Bowl or bust. That's one of the easier ones. Brock Purdy, all these contracts getting up. Brandon Ayuk, it depends on what happens with him. But even if they don't sign him or if they do sign him, I still think they'll be Super Bowl or bust. The whole thing with Kyle Shanahan choking, they're an easy Super Bowl or bust. The Eagles, they were in the Super Bowl the other year, but they had such a regression last year that I think a Super Bowl victory would be cool for them. They've won a couple years ago. I mean, their coach definitely has to get to the Final Four, so I think they're in the middle between Final Four, Super Bowl, or bust. But they still didn't win that Super Bowl, so it's one of those things. You have new guys replacing the old guys, so yeah, if they make the Super Bowl, that would be awesome. But if you lose to a team like the Chiefs, there's not really too. Imagine again. Not really too much wrong, but I'm really close to putting them Super Bowl or bust. Fans, if you're a fan of one of these teams, let me know whether I'm getting these right or wrong. The Raiders, there's really no expectations for them. Playoffs would be cool, I guess, for them, but I mean, you're in a tough division. You're in a team where, we'll get to the Chargers, I guess, but, those three teams are more on the upswing than you are. There's really no expectations, so go out there and fight and don't poke the bear with Kermit the Frog. So The Green Bay Packers, the Super Bowl would be cool this year. They're not Super Bowl or bust quite yet. I know you just signed the contract. I know you had a lot of young talent. Super Bowl victory would be awesome. Jordan Love in his second year, similar to Aaron Rodgers in his, I think, third or fourth year. Yeah, the Super Bowl would be cool for them, but you're competing against a lot of teams. The defense still needs to whip up into shape, but the Super Bowl definitely is possible for them. I just wouldn't put them in the Super Bowl bubble quite yet. With Washington playoffs would be cool because you have Jane Daniels, rookie. You have a lot of older pieces. I think they could very well make it to the playoffs. Not as high as them as some people are, but you're the Washington Commanders. I mean, come on. What are you expecting here? You're in a tough division with two teams that are expected to make the playoffs. So if they sneak into a wild card, I think they'd be pretty satisfied with that. But I don't think, especially in the year one with all these, the coach quarterback, I don't think it's expected. The Cardinals are one of these because they had a little rebuild here. You're also in a tough division. I think at this point for me, they're in the playoffs would be cool. Although playoffs or bust is an interesting category. I think some people would put them there. I just think that they're not there quite yet to have playoff expectations. I know Kyler Murray with the contract, but yeah, at this point, you're just waiting to see how it's going to be happening. I think the Steelers at this point are just playoffs or bust. Tomlin are good off the pot at this point. With Justin Fields look like he's going to play for a lot of the season. That's my feeling at least right now. The defense is good. Offensive line is getting better. You're in a tough division, but I think the Steelers, you haven't made the playoffs in a few years now. When you do, you win a game maybe. So or you lose to the Chiefs or Browns by a lot. So I think their playoffs are bust at this point. It's kind of the expectations there. The Bills, I have them in the Super Bowl this year, but I'm kind of not liking the pick. I just don't know who else to pick. I want to be a little bit outside the box. I think they're going to rely more on the run game this year, but I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the vibes of Super Bowl or bust. I think if they make the Super Bowl, they'll be happy because they made it to the conference finals. I think they finally want to break through that edge. If a team like the Bengals have already been there and the 49ers have already been there, it's like, okay, we can get there. We gotta get a little bit higher. Can you take me higher? The Falcons are playoffs or bust. They have no conference. I mean, can you really see the Falcons having expectations in the playoffs? I mean, take a look at the division here. They're all playoffs or bust. Like, come on, you got to win this week division. Kirk Cousins, the whole deal, no offensive weapons, but you're still in the first year of this regime, so you can't really have any higher expectations. I really don't see them making it to the conference finals, and I don't see them being expected to make it to the conference finals. The Seahawks are they're tough. They're tough. Playoffs would be cool. Playoffs or bust. I'm going to decide playoffs or bust because this defense is good. You have Geno Smith. You didn't make it last year. You made it the year before. You're kind of expecting to make the playoffs. So there's a lot of teams on the fringe here that that really want to make the playoffs. You're not going to fire your coach. Maybe like a team like the Saints, but yeah, I think that you're kind of expected to make the playoffs this year overall. The Patriots have no expectations. Drake May, have some fun. Just don't S the bed. Get some talent in the next offseason. Maybe make a trade midseason for a guy that you're going to re-sign in the offseason. The Browns are, at this point, playoffs or bust. And this is like my cop-out right here. But, you won a playoff. No, you didn't win a playoff game last year. Yeah, you got to make the playoffs with Deshaun Watson in order to be happy. But what the contract would tell you is this. But I think Browns fans tell you, hey, just make the playoffs. Just make the playoffs at this point. Like, we're not expecting anything else. Kind of the feeling over there. Next is the Texans. They are Super Bowl would be cool. No Super Bowl expectations this year, but I mean, Super Bowl would be pretty nice. And I see a lot of teams in the Super Bowl would be cool, which makes me want to put more emphasis on the Super Bowl or bust with CJ Stroud. We all kind of know the storylines with them. So, I think they improved less in the offseason than people would say. That's my hot take. The Chiefs, I mean, they won 2 Super Bowls in a row. They can make it like 4 out of 6 years or something crazy like that. But I don't know. As far as the feeling with the season, it would be kind of empty if they don't make it to the Super Bowl. So they're in between here. I don't think they're quite a true Super Bowl or bust, but I'll just put them there because, we did the whole season. We didn't even win the Super Bowl. Oh, man, sucks to be the Chiefs. The Cowboys, you got to make it to the conference finals. And I think that, or the conference, what was it called? The conference championship. But I don't think they will. I think they're a worse team than last year, but it always happens that way where it's like, oh, they're a worse team, and then they all of a sudden break out. But if you don't make it to the Final Four, you're kind of disappointed with the season. Come on, Cowboys, do it for the first time in 30 years. The Chargers, the playoffs would be cool. I do think it's possible. Jim Harbaugh, there are some expectations, but the defense, I don't think it's quite there yet. But Justin Herbert, you do have some expectations. It's not quite a no expectations, but playoffs are bust, not yet. The playoffs would be cool for them. The Jets, I think some fans would be happy with the playoffs, but honestly, Final Four, with the way they're getting hyped and everything like that, with Aaron Rodgers just being like the final year, I actually do think they could be a Super Bowl would be cool team, or maybe even Super Bowl or bust. But if you make it to the Final Four, I mean, you can't. At least this trade wasn't a disaster, which it seems like it is right now. At least you want to have some fun. The Panthers have no expectations. That one's a pretty easy one. Bryce Young, you brought some weapons in. You're trying to step up the defense a little bit. They have no expectations going into this year. Yeah, they're expected to be a bona fide team. The Titans are a playoffs would be cool team. They did beef up a little bit with Will Levis. You're hearing good hype about him. You're hearing about the wide receivers. So I think that there would be a playoffs would be cool team. Then the rest of the AFC South. Let's see. The Colts are playoffs or bust, especially what happened last year with Anthony Richardson. You have Joe Flacco now with a veteran leadership, Shane Steichen. There's some expectations of the playoffs. So you have with the Jaguars, I think they're in playoffs or bust too. I don't think they really have any expectations to make it to the Final Four as far as like expectations. And what is this video? Anyway, what's the point of this video so far in? But in total, there are 9, 13, 17 plus 21, 23 teams that feel like they have to make the playoffs. There's 16 spots, so there are going to be 7 teams that are disappointed. And maybe one of these teams comes up. As far as all of these teams, the most likely playoff team out of these would be the Chargers for me. And that would be my Giants. But yeah, let me know what you think, and I'll see you guys in my next one.